Hey guys, Bike here, and I'm coming back to you again with another video. This one's going to be about the Void Knight. This is going to be taking a look at the build that I'm working on for this guy, and just to show you how nasty it is. So I'm going to show you guys some gameplay, and then we're going to jump into what I'm wearing, where I'm working towards, what kind of items I want to add to the build, and then the skills. So let's get into it. So here we are. This is Corruption 231, and let's go. So before we get started, I'll just point out that these are the modifiers right over here. We have a decent amount of modifiers built up so far, so just want to show you guys that real quick. This is Corruption 231. So if you've been coming by my live streams, you've probably seen me playing this build recently. And it's very effective. It does a lot of area of effect damage. And it feels really nice. One nice thing about it is when I apply that Void Cleave, my Erasing Strike becomes a guaranteed crit. And so, like, yeah, having some crit on the build's okay, but knowing that one of your main damaging builds, one of your main damaging abilities, Erasing Strike, is a guaranteed crit, you don't feel the need to stack crit chance. This build, you're looking more for like void penetration and or critical strike multiplier. As you can see, these guys do not stand a chance, and this gets really crazy when you're playing against higher health enemies. These guys, they're just dying so quick. But if you can drop a Void Rift on top of their head, hit them with a Void Cleave, and then follow it up with an Erasing Strike, it will do a lot of damage. This guy's trying to... That guy was doing a lot of freaking damage. He was almost like a mini boss, but we still took him out. Yeah, let's show off the skills. Okay, so we are back here. Yeah, that as you can tell, the build is tanky, but I was not expecting those guys to be doing as much damage as they were. That was rather insane. Okay, so let's take a look at the abilities and what we got. So right now we're using Vengeance. I knew I was going to have to be using Vengeance once I started pushing past Corruption 200. Originally I was using Rive because it does more damage. Like, we're not even spec'd into Rive right now, and it's already doing 11,613 as opposed to Vengeance, which we're fully spec'd into, and it's only doing 9,188. Yeah. Rive is definitely the damage king, but one reason why we take Vengeance is this node right here, Bolster. You take 25% less damage, and your armor is increased by 50% for 2 seconds if you land a hit. So it's really important to just, in between your combos, be trying to hit, land your hits to get that damage reduction. Void Cleave. Now, this particular build uses a two-handed weapon. In this case, we're using Apathy's Maw. That is required because Void Cleave requires a two-handed weapon. So if you're going to try and do this build without Void Cleave, if you wanted to use like two single-handers, or if you wanted to use like a shield, I would probably recommend dropping this and maybe speccing into Lunge, or perhaps you can get away with Devouring Orb or Anomaly. I haven't really messed with these two skills at all, so I can't really speak into that. But I did hear some people who've done similar builds like this in the past using these abilities. And maybe if I wanted to push past 300 corruption, maybe that's something we got to do. But For right now, this is what I've been using. So with the Void Cleave, it on paper it does an alright amount of damage, but the thing about Void Cleave is all about the setup. Because right now, Void Cleave, it really unlocks the rest of our abilities. So I worked my way down here, grabbing some of this stuff, and I'm not gonna. I'll show you what I'm using right here. Where we took 3 points here, we took 3 points here, a point here. If we land a critical strike, the attack can't be dodged, but this attack is not a guaranteed crit. So, you know, increase our crit chance, critical strike multiplier. These are all good. When this crits, it feels great. It's gravy. But this right here, this really helps set up the build. If Void Cleave hits at least one enemy, your next erasing strike is always a critical strike. It's juicy. It's really juicy. Going back over here, this is the next part. This is the next part of our build that really gets unlocked by the fact that we're using Void Cleave. Take 3 points here just for the extra cooldown recovery. That's why it's only 2.5 seconds. We take 2 points here to help, you know, shred some resistances and stuff like that. But this node right here, you cast Abyssal Echoes after using Void Cleave. Abyssal Echoes cast in this way uses its mana. So there's a little bit of an upfront mana cost when you use Void Cleave, but believe me, it's worth it. So let's go over to Abyssal Echoes. So I took 3 points in Crippling Waves. And this is the juiciness right here as well. So after casting Abyssal Echoes, your next Erasing Strike and Void Cleave deal more damage, multiplicative with other modifiers, to slowed enemies. This is why we have to take 3 points in here. This slows enemies. When we apply, so when we cast Void Cleave, it's also going to apply Abyssal Echoes, which is going to slow enemies, and then it also gives us a proc that on our next Erasing Strike, enemies that are slowed by Abyssal Echoes, Erasing Strike will do an extra 80% damage. And if you remember earlier, with the guaranteed strike, critical strike, we're doing an extra 80% damage that we know will be a crit, unless they have critical strike avoidance. Yeah, it's a problem. It's okay. Anybody who's run Echoes for a while, you already know what I'm talking about. But nonetheless, let's not let that damper this mood. So we took 1 point here. The main reason why I guess I could have gone for Sanguine. This is possibly a good move as well. So your choice. I just went for a little extra spell damage for our Abyssal Echoes. I took 4 points and Embrace the Darkness. This grants us a condition called Nether Coating, which increases our attack speed, and we deal more damage to enemies that are blind. I'm not really running blind in this build, but if you can figure out a way to stack it on there in an effective manner to where you can blind enemies, you can get some extra damage out of it. What I'm really looking for is the attack speed, because when we're using a weapon like Apathy's Maw, it attacks really slow, and it's really nice to have that up in between when we're doing our attacks. I will admit, this is kind of a holdover for when I was using Rive, when I was trying to get all the attack speed I could. Now that we're using Vengeance, or we're just trying to use it to get a couple hits in to get the damage reduction proc up, this might be something I look at in the future and possibly replace, but it feels good. I like it, so I'm keeping it for now, but this is something that could possibly get chopped. And then Nether Coating also grants you a chance to inflict Time Rot. If we can look at Time Rot deals damage over time, increases stun duration, and lasts 3 seconds, stacks up to 12 times. It's cool. We're not doing a whole bunch of damage over time with this, but you know, every little extra damage helps. But we're not really trying to scale with damage over time. I then took 5 points in Deep Expanse. This allows the Abyssal Echoes to spread even more. And this helps it chain to more enemies. That way it can latch onto somebody else and keep chaining out. I figured this was pretty good. If I were going to remove points, I could see myself removing the 3 points here on Abyssal Tendrils and moving it up here. That way it just chains to more enemies. Okay, and then Erasing Strike. So there's a couple different ways you guys could do this. So our cooldown on this is 3.1 seconds. Void Cleave is 2.5 seconds. I did take an additional charge for Erasing Strike, but I have to admit, I'm not using it that often. I almost never follow up with another Erasing Strike right away. I try to do Void Cleave, Erasing Strike. Now, I know Void Cleave has the ability to where we can add an extra charge over here. Or if you got the Dark Stripe boots, you can use that to give yourself another charge of Void Cleave. But with our current mana issues and the fact that Void Cleave is now also applying Abyssal Echoes, if I did that really quickly, I would be in negative mana quick. And I'd be sitting there trying to get it all back with my Vengeance, which is not the most effective way. The most effective way to do this is get in, hit with a quick Vengeance just for a little bit of damage reduction, hit with the Void Cleave, follow it up with an Erasing Strike, go back to Vengeance for a little bit, generate some mana, and then if the enemy is still alive, which means they're probably a tougher enemy, or they got a whole bunch of dodge and stuff like that, which... then I would be activating Volatile Reversal here. Create a Void Rift, because I've already been standing there for a couple seconds, so I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm just going to create the Rift on the spot, then reapply Abyssal Echoes with Void Cleave, following up with an Erasing Strike. But that's all going to be without outside the realm of those 3.1 seconds. So we probably don't need this additional charge here. It's a good little buffer to have. Maybe you want to throw it down twice really quick, but Erasing Strike on its own without using the Void Cleave does feel a little weak because we're relying on that guaranteed crit. But nonetheless, I am going to show you guys a few extra things we could go if we wanted to. So we got Time Loop down here. We could take a point in Time Loop, which would give us an Echo. This is a possibility. The thing is, it adds an extra 60 mana. And right now, our mana at 166 cannot support this. But if we did this, we could take Time Loop and then take Shattered Continuity for no cooldown. Again, we're running into the same issue that we had before. We don't really have the mana to keep spamming Erasing Strike. If I were gonna work on an Erasing Strike spam build, I would probably definitely change some things. What I would most likely do is I'd start working up this side of the tree. You can increase the base critical strike chance of Erasing Strike by 3% per point, so you're going to get a 9% increase whenever you're using Erasing Strike. You can then take a critical strike modifier right here. You can also get more cooldown recovery speed if you don't want to go down this route, but it does increase the mana per point. You can get up there. And this right here, if you do land a crit, would give you a chance to get more Void Essence. Void Essence is actually pretty useful. So it gives you 15% increased void damage, 15% increased melee damage, and 10% reduced stun duration. And you can have a maximum of 3 of these. So if you have all 3 of these, what is that, 45%? 45% increased void damage, 45% increased melee damage. Like, this can stack up real quick. We do get a little bit of Void Essence from excuse me, from our vengeance right here, if we repositate and if we kill an enemy, we have chances to get it. It's also probably worth mentioning that on vengeance I took attack speed, double repositate, additional charge. Repositate is basically a parry, so to speak. You parry a blow, you take reduced damage, and you get like a buff out of it. So instead of taking 25% damage reduction, we take a 16% damage reduction. We're mostly looking for the buffs. So we get an additional charge. So with this, we have three overall charges of repositate, which could give us damage reduction. And while we're getting a repositate ready, we have 100% increased damage, like global damage rating. This is nice. It buffs up our other skills. Doesn't really do too much for vengeance. So yeah. Slight tangent there. So we this is what I would take if I was working on some sort of crit build. But since we're using Void Cleave and we're using the guaranteed crit, this is the build I'm working with. It is not finalized, but I just wanted to get this out there. That way you guys could take a look at it, see what you guys think, and maybe get some inspiration. And lastly, we have Volatile Reversal. This is a pretty standard volatile reversal. We don't care about getting our health back. We just want that recovery speed up. That way it's always available to us if we want to drop it on somebody's head. So with all of this, we have a 3.6 second cooldown. And when we use it for 2 seconds, we go back in time 2 seconds. It's really easy to time up if you've gotten used to this. If you're standing in one area for a while, kind of like trying to land some of your combos, and you activate this, you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to pop right there. It's going to create these void rifts. They're going to increase your damage for the next 2 seconds in that area. That's the perfect time to use your combo Void Cleave Erasing Strike. And we get some extra buffs here. We get an attack speed buff, and we get a movement speed buff if we need to get out of the way quick. This is going to be the main node that you're going to be looking for, the Harbinger of Dust. Enemies take increased damage for 4 seconds by 30%. So, yeah, these are the abilities. So let's take a quick look at the gear and the idols. So Idols have mostly been used to kind of fill in gaps of where we needed a little extra help. We probably don't need these poison resistant idols as much anymore. This one just gave us some vitality and some increased void damage. So this is probably something I could take a look at. Like I said, this is not finalized, but we could definitely move some stuff around. For this one, I just saw 20% extra armor. I know we're not using Warpath, but that 20% extra armor is kind of juicy. This one is straight up just a health buff. This one's kind of nice. We get the 72% increase in melee void damage. And for this one, we're a little bit more mana efficient, which is nice. It helps out a lot, but it also increases our melee void damage by 59%. Now the gear, I'll obviously show you what I have. I know for sure you're not going to be able to get all of this. As you saw, I have 22 in all of my skills. The reason why is I have an Omnis. This is a rare amulet. If you're starting out and you're like, wow, that's a cool looking build, I want to try and copy it, Omnis is a pretty rare drop. I got lucky with this one, and this is almost feels like a cheat code. I put this in here and it's just like, yes, I know I'm missing out on a bunch of stuff that I could be getting. Like I could be putting more health in here. I can be putting void penetration, armor, resistances I might be missing out on. I slot this in here and it's just, I get all of these resistances across the board, plus a +1 to all of my skills. On top of it, the implicit gives us a 20% critical strike chance, which it kind of helps a little bit with the Void Cleave, since that's not a guaranteed crit, but It's really nice. It shores up a lot of our defenses. It leaves us more room for damage on our gear because we get so many of our resistances taken care of by this. Helm, just went for health. The increased echo damage when a skill echoes. At first, I didn't really like this. This was just something that popped up on there, and I couldn't get rid of it. I couldn't chaos it. I didn't want to try and remove it with a rune of removal. I just kept it. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes when like your racing strike or your void cleave echoes, this can get really nasty. Now, I haven't focused this on my build, but it's pretty juicy sometimes when it happens. But the thing is, it's not 100% like I know it's going to happen. So there's kind of a feels bad, but at the same time, when it does, it feels pretty good. And for this, we just took strength, health, and then vitality and a little bit of poison resistance. Quick note, the vitality, stacking vitality with this build is actually not too bad because our two main damage dealing abilities, Void Cleave and Erasing Strike, they both scale with vitality and strength. I like to always have strength on my Sentinel builds because it gives us armor, but the vitality does feel pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty cool. Like this Titan Heart right here, we didn't get like any fancy tier 6 or tier 7 affixes on here, but we got some pretty legitimate affixes. We got, you know, plus 12 to vitality and 161 armor. I can't argue with that. I think this is a good all-around Titan Heart I can put on other characters if I want to. Apathy's Maw, I'm definitely looking for a better one, but I would say Apathy's Maw is probably going to be best in slot. The void penetration, the chance to apply doom, the just huge amount of melee void damage you get on top of the leech rate, it is very nice. Shatter Chains, we got pretty lucky with this. We got we had an LP1 and we were able to get a pretty high tier 6 hybrid health roll on here. I'm very happy with this. I'm probably not going to swap this out at all. Foot of the Mountain, this is great for survivability. It gives us a plus 12 to all attributes, which I believe that's the highest it gives. It's very nice. And then again, we got lucky with this. We were able to get a pretty decent middle of the road tier 6 movement speed on here. It is very nice. One of the main reasons we also take this is the endurance roll. And if we're standing still for a while, even though we don't have a lot of dodge, it will convert our dodge rating into endurance. I want to say this right. Endurance threshold. It'll convert it into endurance threshold. Gloves, these are kind of just your standard Sentinel gloves. I mean, honestly, these are not even the greatest. I'd probably prefer something with some more armor, but they were just a nice roll. We got our melee leech with this. We got armor, hybrid health, a little bit of resistance, some critical strike chance. Good all around. Our rings are not the best. This one had a pretty nice tier 6 health affix. Main reason why I kept it. Plus, it also has physical resistance on here, which is, if I took this away, we would be lacking. I would like to replace this with a Siphon of Anguish at some point. I'm trying to find the right one, and it's taken me a while to get there. Plus, I've already just been bodying just about everything. There's a few times I've died that made me go, huh? But for the most part, I'm doing okay. But yeah, I would like to replace this ring with Siphon of Anguish at some point. Our other ring over here, this one, I wasn't too thrilled about the implicit, but now I think the implicit's okay. Plus 20 mana, plus a little extra mana regen. It does help. It does help. And we were able to get a nice 89% increased void damage out of this, 42% crit strike chance. a little bit of crit strike avoidance. We're still not to 100% yet, but the blessing that we have is let's go ahead and take a look. The blessing that we have is not max roll. It's only 54%. This goes all the way up to 70. If we can get a 70% on this with that ring that we have there, we will have 100% critical strike avoidance. And I've had this relic for a while. I actually found this one in the good old Paladin days when I was leveling up with Warpath. If any of you guys saw my streams way back when, it was a couple months ago. I found this and I banked it because it is a max tier. Well, it's not a max, but it's a high. It's a decent tier 7 void damage relic. Plus, you get all the nice goodies that you can get with Code of the Erased Sentinel. You get the 25% armor mitigation that also applies to your damage over time instead of just taking full damage over time, which goes past all of your armor. You get 24% increased armor and +1 all your Sentinel skills. The lightning resistance we don't really need. If you guys can see right over here, that's actually one of our blessings. We did take the lightning resistance grand blessing. So yeah, that is the gear. That is the idols. Last thing to take a look at. Right over here. Oh, let me take this point right now. So we took 8 points here, 4 points here, 1 point in Relentless. I feel like I had to take 1 point here. If I can move away from this 1 point, again, this is not final, but I think I had to have a perfect 30 points to keep this. This helps us a lot. Again, the attack speed is not as needed, but it feels nice when you're using something like Apathy's Maw, which is so slow. So, yeah, I like having just a little bit of extra attack speed. I just don't want to be standing there going, ugh. If I could honestly take this point out and put it over here, I would probably do that. This extra 5% damage, I mean, we're getting an extra 4 mana on hit. If we can get it up a little bit more, it might help, but nonetheless, this is good. I like this. When you're using Vengeance, you get 10 health on hit and 4 mana. This was really insane when we were using Rive and we were just like all over the place. So we took 11 points in Paladin, and this one I would say I only dipped into Paladin for survivability, but I've kind of pulled back a little bit as I've been able to get more affixes on my gear. So I took just enough points over here for the elemental resistance, and I've taken just enough over here for the health and the healing effectiveness. It's whatever. The health is pretty nice. Would I ever fully pull out of these? Possibly, if I just wanted more damage. But right now they provide enough healing. I don't feel the need to go all the way up to 15 points and get Sigils of Hope. I know this is a very popular ability to take across all Sentinel builds. I personally did not lean towards that way, but yes, I do understand it is very popular. The amount of damage it gives is very nice if you're working towards that. Going back to what I was saying earlier about trying to pump up our critical strike multiplier, we took this node right here, Void Corruption, critical multiplier per point spent in Void Knight. It's increased by 1% per point. So right now we're getting a critical strike multiplier of 67% with all the points that we've taken in here. Just a quick overview. We took 10 in Abyssal Endurance. I mean, health, void resistance, physical resistance. It's great. I took 2 points down here. I might have to re-look at everything. I might have to look at everything. This one's actually not too bad. It increases our damage on recent kills. So after we kill something for 4 seconds, we get a 20% damage increase. I took 6 points here for the extra leech because we're not running like a bleeding heart or anything. That way we're not just relying on our gloves. And this applies to both void damage and melee damage. Of course, we're running melee void damage, but this is nice to have this as a nice little backup to our gloves. 8 points here just for the strength and the health. I took 5 points here, and I think this is a good place to put leave it under woe. You get the 35% increased damage, the 25% increased void damage on melee kill, and the 25% increased armor on melee kill. I think these are pretty respectable stats right here. I took 10 points down here, extra health, increased percentage health, or just stacking that health up. Echo chance. I do think that this is a pretty important one for echoing strikes. The main reason why is I wanted to have access to this one right here, which gives us another echo chance as well as the increased attack speed. In the future, I may pull back on these, but right now having an extra 20% echo chance between these two abilities, I think it's nice. It is a bit of a layover for when I was using Rive, because Rive has an ability. There's a node where it doubles your echo chance on hit. So right now with our Void Knight, we have a 10% chance to create an echo. We have a 10% chance to create an echo. 10%, 10%. That's 30%. With Rive, it was 60%. Echoes were spawning everywhere. It was insane, but we've moved away from Rive because we've been stacking all this void damage for these big hit combos, so we're not just stuck there just buzzsaw the entire time. That way we can kind of, bam, 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 get in, combo, combo, move on. And I'm probably going to put the rest of my points into this one right here, Dread. Increased void damage, 80%, and the boom to speed. It's very nice. I like it a lot. Okay, this is already a pretty long video, so I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope you appreciate the in-depth nature I've given this. As I've said before, I'm still kind of tweaking this, working on it. I just wanted to show you guys what I'm doing. If you guys want to see me working on this live, information about my live streams is in the description down below, but I am streaming to 3 different platforms now. That way my face is in more places if you want it. We got Twitch, we got YouTube, and we got Kick. So anyway, you guys have yourselves a good one. You take care. Cheers.